Hello, my friends, and welcome to 7 super short scary stories from Reddit. Need a few scary stories to fuel your night? Don't worry, we have you covered. Here's 7 super short scary stories from Reddit authors. I was 13 when my reflection disappeared in a blink at the bathroom mirror. 4 men in suits shoved me into a black sedan that night, and I spent the next 5 years trapped in a small, reflective glass box in which I saw absolutely nothing. The younger me couldn't handle it. Often I would sit and stare into a mirrored wall, which of course would only reflect the wall behind me, which would only reflect the wall in front. On and on forever, like an illusion of a corridor trailing off into infinity. Under a kind of spell, I would spend all my waking hours simply sitting and staring into oblivion, imagining that one day my reflection would return and free me from this prison. But this morning, something changed. Looking off into the distance, I noticed a distant speck fleeing up the hall of mirrors towards me. It grew in size over several hours before I could finally recognize it. Now, I don't know why it left me, but I can guess why it's racing back with a look of such terror spread across my own face. Knowing won't save us, of course, because now I can also see what's chasing it. I woke up and it was there. A lump I could feel in my throat, like something I had eaten was stuck halfway swallowed. It wasn't painful, really, but I could feel it there. Constantly. As the day continued, the feeling only got worse. Now I'm in the bathroom, holding myself up because my legs are about to give out. Sweat is dripping from my forehead and I'm gasping for breath. I attempt to angle my head so I could see the back of my throat. Not much luck. Just a glimpse of something gray and slimy. I just had to get it out. If I could remove it, I would be fine. Opening my mouth as wide as I could, I reach inside. My eyes water as I fight the gag reflex. In no time, I feel the tips of my fingers rub against the lump. I feel my esophagus contract as I fight to find the purchase. Saliva runs down my chin and along my neck. I got it. With a quick yank, I pull the thing from my throat, only to find it won't stop coming. I try to ignore the feeling of its thousands of tiny legs fighting against my fingers as I continue to pull its long body from deep within me. Without warning, pain shoots up my finger. It bit me and I feel pins and needles moving up my arm. I panic and my teeth come down, filling my mouth with vicious fluid as it severed. But it didn't die. I know this because, even though the piece in my hand stopped moving, I felt the rest of it crawl back down my throat. The soft purring of an electric fan filled the lab, punctuated by the click of a computer mouse. Jeremy sighed as he moved on to the next picture, after looking at the clock and noting that it was past midnight. The photo lab was dark, save for the glow of the monitors. They had received a rush order, over 500 pictures of a youth baseball game, that needed to be processed, edited, and printed by the next morning. Jeremy was mildly annoyed that he had been chosen to stay late and finish the job, but overtime was overdue. It was mind-numbing work, and occasionally he found himself repeating the same couple edits over and over, whether or not the picture even needed them. After all, he was just an underpaid student. He barely even knew how to use the editing software. He clicked to the next picture and groaned. The camera wasn't even focused on the player hitting the ball. Instead, some old guy standing in the crowd was the center of the shot. He tried to use his rudimentary knowledge of the program to fix it, but nothing really worked. He would need to ask the customer if they still wanted the picture or not. As he switched to the next picture, someone knocked on the door. Probably some drunk high schoolers playing a prank. In small towns, kids had to resort to mischief in order to entertain themselves. "We're closed," he called, annoyed. He heard footsteps shuffling away and returned his focus to the monitor. Something was odd about the picture that was up on the screen, but he couldn't quite place it. Then, in a flash of realization, he figured it out. Flipping through the rest of the pictures, he noticed that the kids in each photo were different. This wouldn't be odd normally, as sometimes coaches will commission pictures of their whole team throughout a game, but the players were from different teams, different games even. Then he caught it. In the corner of one of the photos, right at the edge of the crowd, sat the same old man, not watching the game, but watching the photographer. A chill shot up his spine. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe the guy was just an old-timer who just wanted to watch some kids play ball. After all, it wasn't that big of a deal to be spotted at 2 games in the same tournament. He scrolled his mouse wheel through the remaining photos, looking for anything else strange. He jumped out of his seat when he noticed that in every picture, each and every one, the old man was sitting in the crowd. Jeremy was so absorbed, shocked, and disturbed by his discovery that he failed to notice the shuffling footsteps returning. That is, until he heard the sharp knock on the door. He cowered in fear, alone in the trailer, save for the sound of the electric fan, punctuated by a sharp, rhythmic knocking. It was time to take a break from playing video games in my room all day, so I opened my door and headed downstairs. My family was sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV as I passed them on my way to the back door. I stepped outside and into the backyard to smoke a cigarette. I was only a few drags into my cigarette when I heard the back door press firmly shut and lock. I quickly stood up from the steps I was sitting on and turned around to find my mom standing at the door. I let out a small laugh and asked her what she was doing. She just stared at me, saying nothing. My smile was fading when I asked her again why she had locked me out of the house. Her face was still emotionless. After throwing my cigarette down, I got closer to the door, started jiggling the handle, and demanded she open the door. By now I could see my father and sister standing a few feet behind her, giving me the same blank stare my mom was giving me. I began banging on the door, yelling at them to open it, and if this was a joke, it wasn't funny anymore. They continued watching me. I took a step back and thought to myself that the front door is likely unlocked. I bolted to the fence to go through the gate, thinking I can get to the door before they lock it as well. Sprinting through the grass on the side of the house, I reached the middle of the driveway before I'm forced to jump out of the way from the car pulling in. It was the family car, and everyone was in it. That's when I remembered that I was home alone. The man held a small, shiny scalpel in his right hand. With his left, he brought the medical mask hanging from his neck over his small grin. Then he flicked the interrupter on the wall, flooding the room with light. His body cast a shadow covering the steel operating table sitting at the center of the colorless room. Confidence found his way in each of his striding footsteps, echoing the thudding of his feet against the cement floor. When the man came to a stop beside the table, only 3 sounds could be heard. The beating of his heart, the flickering of the light, and the muffled sound of a panicked voice. The self-proclaimed surgeon gave a soothing tap on the head of the strapped individual, only to bring the patient in a state of hectic panic. The patient saw, with eyes wide open, the scalpel gently running across their chest as their skin surrendered to the crimson-soaked blade. The surgeon knew he only had a few minutes to complete his work, so he kept focused as his sweat rolled down his face, knowing that time pushed onwards. "You must understand," This job was never my first choice. I wasn't sitting in elementary school thinking, I want to be a bus driver, while everyone else chose astronauts, football players, singers, or dinosaurs. But sometimes life pushes you in a certain direction, and you wind up exactly where you ought to be. I love kids. No, not in that way, you sicko. I was in an accident years ago that left me with a remarkably functional yet entirely mutilated... Well, suffice to say, I can't have kids of my own. And when you can't have something, you just want it more. The story of how I discovered this career path is a long and boring one. But I'm glad things lined up the way they did. I love seeing each kid smile as they eagerly run up the driveway, backpacks slapping back and forth behind them, before gingerly taking steps up the stairs. Being the kind-hearted person I am, I have a bowl of snacks that most kids take from before sitting down. It's an assortment of chocolate, cookies, salamis, and cheeses. Sweet and savory can't cater to just one palate. And while there are a few children who think they taste funny, I'm not claiming anywhere to be a decent chef, but I do try. Then there are the kids who trudge along a bit more slowly. No smile. Children with souls that have been beaten out of them. Sunken eyes. Neutral expression. Wondering why their parents even bothered. Why they even exist. It pains me to the very core. And I simply can't let it slide. See, my first choice career was an assassin. I enjoyed the thrill of the hunt as a child, and felt an insatiable need to end the lives of those who did not deserve to live. Those that hunt others. And I had a knack for channeling that brimming rage into precision, care, catharsis. Granted, at the time my hunts were limited to mean pets. Over time I perfected my skills, and unfortunately I've always been kind of a chunky individual, so the whole assassin-for-hire thing was right out. Which brings me to how perfectly my job and my hobby align. I find all sorts of crooked morals in the parents of the sunken children, and I am all too keen on removing these parents from their kids' innocent lives, from existence. The smiles on the faces of the freed children warms the remainder of my soul, and it makes life worth living. Oh, and the body disposal is a breeze. You know the saying, kids will eat anything with chocolate or cheese. The faceless like to play at night, like to run through the fog, heavy and thick, that banks near the ground. The faceless like to play with others. They walk out the woods and along the roads in search of new friends. The faceless like to meet new friends. It doesn't matter if they're adults or teenagers or other children out late at night. The faceless like to play with other children, to greet them and to play games with them and to laugh with them. The faceless like to be children, to look like boys in t-shirts and shorts and tennis shoes, and like girls in pink dresses and white tights. The faceless like to trick other children, to lure them into the dark, dark woods, and to laugh at them when they become lost. The faceless like to trick them, to encircle them, and grab their limbs and hear their screams when they take away their faces. The faceless love to make new friends. The faceless would love to meet you. That's all the time I have for today, my friends. I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening. I'm Amori. Now, listen to the spooky tunes.